How challenging has this time been for childcare centres and their staff?
Good afternoon. It's been very challenging. I mean, the last 2 years have been challenging, but particularly the last few weeks as the circumstances are changing so rapidly. The health advice is changing. The levels of community transmission are so high in the eastern states. It's putting a lot of pressure on centre directors and service managers.
It's also a very difficult time for parents and families. Many parents have had to miss out on work because childcare centres have closed. What do you make of the government's test to stay policy, which requires parents to get their hands on rapid antigen tests, which are quite expensive, in order to send their children back to childcare centres?
I absolutely understand the intent. That's about trying to keep centres safe for both children and adults. We have to remember that children under 5 can't be immunised at this time, and there's no foreseeable change to that. And we also are mindful that while educators and teachers have been vaccinated and are now getting their booster shots and so forth, that can make it harder in terms of identifying COVID. So we do need to stay diligent about trying to contain and keep COVID out of early childhood settings. I think early childhood settings are very well placed to provide rapid antigen tests to parents as well as to staff. But of course, at the moment, there's a lack of supply and there's a lack of coordination between federal and state governments to provide those tests through the services where they can. I think the New South Wales Department of Education is providing some tests, as you mentioned in your story, but it's a relatively small number given the amount of testing that might be needed for services to keep operating safely.
What are the long-term impacts of having children out of childcare?
Well, the biggest long-term impact is the children missing out on that important social and emotional development that they get through participating in early childhood education, learning all the skills, confidence, curiosity, communication, collaboration. These are critical skills that they need throughout their life, but particularly in the transition to school. So we don't want services to be closed or for children to have another year of disrupted early education. But we have to balance that in terms of the safety of both the children and the adults in these centres.
What are you hearing from staff members and parents as well? There must be a lot of frustration out there.
There is frustration on both sides. Absolutely empathise with parents who are trying to make decisions about returning to work, perhaps coming back from holidays, have older children about to go back to school. It's a confusing time and it's frustrating if there's short notice changes to early education provision. So we know that vacation care services are struggling for staff as well as long day care services. I completely understand that parents are frustrated. One of the things we could do for families is to have a more flexible childcare subsidy system. We really need to be able to keep the revenue flowing to services so that they can stay open and they can pay their staff without that meaning that families have to pay for services they're unable to use. If we can have a flexible approach to the way funding flows to services, families would be better placed to make decisions on a day-to-day basis about whether they want to send children into the service or need to keep them at home without having to worry too much about the financial impact of that. And at the same time, educators need the security of income that we did have under emergency arrangements with the childcare subsidy for a period of time last year.
Samantha Page, we have to leave it there. Thank you so much for your time.
You're very welcome.